We've made it to episode 30.
Episode 30, my goodness. What has this been? 9 months and a week of schlepping, just working our butts off for our audiences. And here we are, episode 30, and it's just in time for back to school.
Yeah.
So we're focusing here on high school back to school movies. And granted, they're not like about going back to school. They're just taking place in high school predominantly. Really highlight the high schools in big ways too in all of these 5 that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and I think it's also focusing on the main cast happen to be high school students. And there are a lot of movies that we could have talked about, but we've already covered, like Scream. I know what you did last summer. Yeah, The Faculty. The Craft. Yeah, there's a lot of
We haven't done a deep dive. I know what you did last summer. I think we gotta come back to that one because we could deep dive into that mofo. That could be its own cast. Those first 2 at least.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch the TV show of I Know What You Did Last Summer? I gave it a shot and I didn't like it. I abandoned it. Hence, it's not getting picked up. I guess.
What a shame. What a shame.
I mean, you don't got Jennifer Love. You don't got your Sarah Michelle or your Freddie Princes or your Felipes. There was no star power in the TV show.
No.
But we'll save I Know What You Do Last Summer gas till another cast. Today we're going to be talking about Prom Night from 1989's Cutting Class, starring Brad Pitt. This one came out of nowhere for me. I had no idea.
Really?
He was a slasher. I had no knowledge of this movie at all until we started digging into back to school horrors. Then 93's initial Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, 2006 All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, starring the lady who's been in the news lately who likes to defecate in the bed. You gotta bring that up immediately. Anytime Amber Heard comes up, she's gonna be the girl that pooped the bed forever. And then finally, the most contemporary one we're discussing is 2017's Tragedy Girls, which is another one under my radar, and until we did the research, I knew nothing about it.
Yeah,
and I'm looking forward to talking about that one, but we'll save that to the end. Well, we're doing something a little different today, since it is back to school horror. We're actually structuring this podcast in an interesting format, similar to, I don't know, we haven't mentioned this before, I don't think, but there's a companion podcast, if you will, from a few years back called Icon Showdown Podcast, where we kind of rate the top 2 horror movies from every year, going all the way back 30 years. We did this in October of 2018, I think, when you were like in at least half the episodes. And we're doing something similar here where there's a ranking process, but we're grading them since this is high school. So we're going to give them grades from A's to F's, and then we're going to also calculate the GPA, which my math skills aren't great, so we had to use a website.
Mine are
plugging that in.
Garbage. I don't even think I can say skills when I say math.
But it was interesting to see how they all racked up. And similar to the Icon Showdown podcast, we've broken into 5 categories here, which we'll grade them in each, being plot, characters, production values, twisties and deeper meanings, and then finally just the kills. We always love talking kills. So we're going to give that its own grade, which I guess, kind of comes into plot and production value too. But we're just going to focus on the kills for our final grade for each one. So let's go all the way back to 1980 and hot off the heels of Halloween, which was a 79 release, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure it was 79. 78. Okay.
78.
So 2 years after she just nails it with Halloween, Jamie Lee pops up in another slasher, Prom Night, and boy, is she ready to dance.
Man, this movie, you would not expect it, but is so much disco. So much disco.
It could be considered a music video, I would argue.
Absolutely.
Over a movie at times.
Absolutely.
So much disco. It was pretty fun to watch, since it's such like nothing we deal with nowadays. It was, a page out of time. And Prom Night's another one I hadn't watched until this cast, which seems a little ridiculous given how well known it is. Prom Night everybody's heard of, and they did do that 2008 remake, which I tried to watch yesterday.
It's not much of a remake.
I couldn't get through it. And Idris Elba was in it too, and I just didn't care. I got about halfway through, and I'm like, I can't do this. My life is too
No.
precious. I can't get through this whole beast. But I didn't have that same feeling for 1980s Prom Night. Even though you're going to see via my grades, I didn't love it. There's some aspects of it, especially I think it kind of reminded me of Sleepaway Camp when we talk about the twisties and deeper meanings. It was doing some interesting stuff with, I think, like late 70s, early 80s is really when like gender roles and stuff was hot topics, I guess, in horror. So we'll dig into that in a bit. Let's talk plot here, though. Give them a rundown of the plot, if you would.
So this movie sort of kicks off, and I think also borrowing from Halloween, where it starts off many years before the actual movie's time period, where these children are playing in. Actually, I couldn't. Was it an abandoned school, or was it?
I think it was either an abandoned school or an abandoned hospital potentially.
Yeah,
it's not totally clear. But I would think maybe it might have been a hospital or some sort of like even like mental facility. You know what I mean? Because I didn't really see a lot of classroom stuff. Although I don't know. I wish I'd paid more attention to that. But
yeah.
Nevertheless, it was an abandoned old government building. Let's put it that
facility.
Way.
Yes. And a handful of children are playing hide and go seek, essentially. And, like kids do, it gets out of hand. And for some reason, a child is thrown from a window. And
you know what? These kids were frightening. She's kind of like scared into falling back through the window, but they're just horrible little brats that essentially are playing like a hide and go seek sort of thing. But it's one of those hide and go seeks where once you're found, you're part of the seeker group, and they just love screaming "kill, kill, kill" at this poor little girl. And it's in a convent. I just looked it up. They were in an abandoned convent. That actually has additional meanings when we get to the twisties, then, based on the repressive nature of what happened in all girls schools. So the kids essentially they murder this girl. It was more like a manslaughter situation as they scare her out of a window. She falls back onto this pane of glass. Now, she could have easily survived, I feel like, if they went out there and actually contacted adults.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Is I think the biggest problem is that these kids would rather cover this up than do anything remotely helpful. And we cut to a little bit later where Leslie Nielsen, who
top billing,
amazing,
and he has like 3 scenes, but top billing.
That's kind of a classic horror, like movie in general. Like you get your A-lister or whomever, your notable actor, you shoot all their scenes within one day, which also in Cutting Class, I believe. All of these movies that we're going to talk about have some really impressive names that are just, side characters. And Leslie Nielsen shows up. He plays Jamie Lee Curtis's father. And
also the principal of the high school,
right?
Which
principal,
you bringing up the stunt cast, if you will, that reminds me of the Fonz being the principal in Scream. Because he was probably at the time the most notable, geezer in it at least. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's exactly kind of where our story really kind of emerges. We have a father who's very protective of his children, and we see that a little bit later in the modern times when he's protecting his son against a bully. We'll do anything to sort of just make sure his kids are okay. But this group of children, I was a little confused, and I think later they actually do a cut back and forth to show you which child was the high school student, because it was really kind of confusing to tell these kids apart when they were children, because we jump into the present day, and then we start to meet our cast and find out that this whole movie's basically going to revolve around prom night.
Right. And Jamie Lee's character, Kim, is the older sister of this set of twins that shows up kind of late to this hide and go seek in the abandoned convent. But she bails. She forgot her book or something, so we lose Jamie Lee Curtis. She's not party to the actual death of her sister, who happens to also be a twin. And the twin doesn't get involved either. He's there, but he's not there, sort of thing. But he is. You see him at first. Yes, as you said, fast forward, and now we got Jamie Lee as the older sister. She does still have her brother. What's the kid's name? Michael Tuff as Alex Hammond.
Yeah.
Interesting curly haired dude. The other main guy who was part of the manslaughter at the beginning, the only male that was playing this hide and go seek, was Nick. So Nick now has a relationship with like the alpha girl that was part of the crew that killed this young girl. And they're kind of have a relationship, but he's trying to get out of it. But she's so like overbearing, she won't let him out of it because he wants to get with Jamie Lee.
He wants to be with Jamie Lee. Yes.
Essentially, they're the what is it? The prom homecoming, or is it the homecoming king and queen?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is there? Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's homecoming in this one, unless I'm mistaken. Oh no, it's prom night. It's called prom night.
It's called prom night.
So there's a king and queen both prom night and homecoming. Is there always? I didn't go to a lot of my dances in high school. Clearly,
no.
But yeah. So these two now, which doesn't make sense to me because Jamie Lee Curtis's character is a year older. So I always thought like it was especially at prom, it's senior prom, right? I thought only the seniors went.
No, I think it was juniors and seniors were allowed to go to prom. At least how it was in my school. And okay. I know that some schools had a junior prom and they had a senior prom, but I think the majority of proms were made up of the upperclassmen, which were junior and seniors.
Fair. Did you go a lot of your school dances back in the day?
I did not. Like I went to my senior prom. I didn't do like the homecoming dances. I wasn't. You know what the homecoming was? You know, it was like almost right out of the gate in the beginning of the school year, which would have been great if there was more horror movies about homecoming dance because there's a lot more mystery about that. You're meeting all of the new students, and I think that was the hardest thing about being a kid is, you know, meeting your friends and like freshman year homecoming. You're like, I don't know anybody really yet because my school had a lot of other schools feed into it. So, you know, it wasn't just the kids you went to junior high with or middle school. It was a number of like other middle schools. So there was a lot of new kids. Therefore, I would think I was a little too shy to ask a girl out. But long story short, no, I didn't go to a lot of this.
Fair. Yeah, nor I went to the prom of a girl at a different school. I didn't go to my own high school's prom. Was there a speech tournament that weekend? But for the most part, I went to the turnabout dances because I was never going to like shell out the money to invite a girl. That's really what it boiled down to for me. Like, no, I'm not.
Now, turnabout is more commonly known across our country as the Sadie Hawkins. It's where the girl asks the guy.
Yeah. That's the only way I was going because she was flipping the bill for it. Otherwise, I'm not going to get out there and, you know, cut a rug. It's just not me. Let's bounce back, get through this plot. Essentially, it's your very typical, okay, somebody's getting revenge for having killed this little girl sort of thing. So it could be her father, the principal, Leslie Nielsen. It could be Jamie Lee Curtis. I got to admit, I didn't know who it was. I was guessing as we watched. I was not entirely sure.
I think that's the best thing going for this movie is the fact that it really did keep you guessing. I will say there was a number of questionable characters, though, like the kid who just shows up in a van one day. Somehow bags this girl. She gets in the car with him, like just straight to school. Like, wait a minute. Yeah.
Jude was another one of the killers. So essentially the manslaughter crew, I guess we'll call them, was Jude, who's kind of like I guess, the quietest of the bunch. Then you got Kelly, who's kind of the more mainstream girl. Then you got this alpha girl, Wendy, and of course the one guy, Alex. Well, Jude, the quieter one, she doesn't even think she's gonna get to go to prom until this very interesting fellow. It kind of reminds me of a combination of Dennis Nedry or Wayne Knight, I guess, meets Chief Wiggum, sort of thing. That's like the amalgamation. That's what I saw going on with him. But he does have this really creepy stalker rapist sort of van, and is able to scoop her up. And next thing Jude knows, she has a date for the prom.
Yeah, and also he introduced himself as Slick.
And he was just like the opposite of Slick, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was very interesting casting on his part. But then Kelly has her own boyfriend at the time, and Wendy, as we noted, has this complex love triangle between Jamie Lee Kim and Mr. Nick McBride, who I gotta say, we don't have a category for acting, but I found this Nick character, who played by Casey Stevens, the best actor in the whole movie. I don't know if you remember his performances, but I thought he was pretty darn good.
Yeah, aside from Leslie Nielsen, that guy's always delivering. Always.
Yeah, always very serious.
That's the beauty of it.
Everything is, yes. What was it? Airplane. He's very stoic, serious character in that one. But okay, so they start dropping like flies. And let's grade our plot then before we move into the next category.
Yeah. I thought the plot was just fine, a B. I didn't think there was anything, like it was kind of borrowing from a lot of other, of his predecessors. Like, it was when you've got a movie called Prom Night, the plot really isn't going to shine.
No, it's not. I even feel like I'm generous giving it a B minus. It probably, like you said, it's pretty middling. Probably should be more of a C. But I will say, just what happens with our twisties in the deep right, I can't help but give credit to the plot. That's what bolstered it for me, I guess. We'll get to that a little later. Characters as a whole, I felt like they were pretty static. I wasn't enamored with any one character, with the exception, I guess, of Nick as the older dude trying to, as he was older, rather. I don't remember his young version all that fondly. But I thought that character was fairly interesting. Honestly, Leslie Nielsen's character was so banal. It was so boring. The mom, though, who was another prime suspect, the mother of the little girl that was killed, she was interesting. But as a whole, you have your three high school just boring girls lined up to get slaughtered, except for Wendy. Wendy is this like alpha type, scary mean girl. Before the fact. Oh, and I looked up this actress. Let me see if I can find her name now. But this Wendy character was married to my favorite author, Michael Crichton.
Is that right?
Yes, it blew my mind. Yes, she was. And I guess she co-wrote Twister with him.
That's impressive.
You don't see that coming. You didn't see that. I mean, I didn't recognize anybody but Jamie Lee and Leslie. So to then see that she actually, had an interesting life following Prom Night.
It looks like she was also a regular on the hit comedy Sledgehammer.
I haven't seen Sledgehammer. What am I missing there?
No, Sledgehammer was a cop police procedural parody style show in the 80s. Played main actor David Rashi. Great guy. He's on Succession right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Interesting.
Yeah.
But her character was at least something sort of new. I'll give her that. She did the mean girl in kind of a different way, I felt.
Yeah.
But I'm still giving that a C in terms of characters.
Yeah, same. I didn't think any of these characters really, I mean, we have a little bit of background information on them. Otherwise, we're kind of just jumping in literally through their school year. We're not even seeing them starting off. We don't really know who they are. They're playing types, So honestly, the most interesting character I was just making fun of a little bit ago is Slick. He is so strange. He's clearly doesn't go to this school. Is he even in high school?
He has the most massive collection of joints too.
I was just gonna say, this guy has joints like he had been like his job is just rolling joints throughout the day.
And he corrupts Jude, who is our kind of shyest of the. And the next thing you know, she's getting laid in his van with him. Then she wants to go get laid by the cliff, and then she's smoking weed with him and drinking with him. I mean, he corrupts Jude to the extreme.
I think he took her virginity.
Oh, he definitely did. But he admitted you took mine too.
Yes.
So,
but you're right.
Yeah, I'll give it to Slick. He was the best character.
Slick literally came out of nowhere, drove his van up on the curb. Like, who is this guy? Yeah. So that's why I didn't grade this cast any lower, because man, they really took a chance on that.
Like, yes, I totally agree. He was kind of the comedic relief, I guess. So production value along the same lines is me to see. It had some interesting locations like the convent that we talked about.
Yeah.
But really middling in terms of production value. I mean, let's pick before we get to the twisties, because that is the most interesting part of this movie. Talking about the kills too. All the girls get killed. The only people that survive are Jamie Lee and dude, Nick. But the kills all sucked. They were all terrible. I didn't like any of them. Did you?
No, and I would say they really sort of stole the DPs and cinematography style from Halloween. They're doing the POV shot, the handheld film, which was, I mean, right there. And I know a lot of people, like, I think even Quentin Tarantino like praises this movie.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, I know people hold this movie in high regard, and I'm not necessarily trashing it. I think it was fine, but I really did. Yeah, I mean, when you've got a slasher on the loose, you have to be way more creative with your kills.
I agree, and the only thing that was kind of notable about the kills is how dragged out each of them were.
Yes,
it took so long to kill each of these girls. The fastest one is Kelly. She's essentially, she just denied her boyfriend who wanted to, go past third base or whatever, or he'd get to third base. She was having none of it. And then he suddenly turns on her. He's like, well, I don't even like you. I'm going to go find some other broad. Yeah. And just bails and then leaves her to get her neck slit, I think is what happened to her. And it was really terrible makeup. Boring. And then you got... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you've got Jude, who gets killed, but then the drag out that scene because somehow Slick gets to the van and starts driving the van, and it's such a funny shot when the killer runs up to the side of the
Yes, he's hanging out the door for a while, and they're just wrestling around on the cliff until at the last minute the killer's able to jump out, and poor Slick and his van go off the cliff. And
also,
Thelma Louise moment.
Very classic Hollywood. When a van goes off the cliff, it better explode, otherwise it's not interesting. Like, why did that van explode? And think about all those joints that are now in the air, like contact high.
No, that's exactly right. Good point. Everyone's gonna get help in that. And then finally we have Wendy, who's being chased through the school for like 15 minutes straight. It was reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw's final kill. It just went on way, way, way too long. And then she happens upon not Wendy, but the first girl, Kelly's body, and she just gets axed, right? It's super boring.
Yeah, and I actually could chime in on production value / deaths. You could almost tell that they put all their money into the decapitated head from the Italian character who they made the biggest piece of shit, and he gets his head chopped off, and then we see it maybe 5 times after that. It's like, okay, we see where the money went. It's out there like on like the dance floor too, I think, because everyone's walking past it. It's like, we get it.
That's a hilarious scene. He's mistaken for Nick. The killer kills this guy because ultimately this big, essentially, he has a unibrowed brute, takes down Nick and kind of steals his crown. So the killer thinks that he's Nick, and he gets his head lopped off, like you said. But the funniest part is the head comes out, but then the principal's like, calm down. He's like, everyone's screaming and running out. He's like, don't panic. Strange moment there. So I gave only that plus to the D plus that I have for the kills, thanks to that head scene was funny.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. And then finally, let's talk the twisty, the big, deeper meaning that's going on here. And as noted before, we got gender issues. So give them the big reveal.
Well, my interpretation was that. Hold on a second. I'm replaying the scene in my head now because the killer, man, they struggled in that fight scene over the disco floor, which almost was like took forever. And you're looking at this character, and this whole time you're trying to guess: is this a man? Is this a woman?
Because there's mascara on, so I thought it was the mom. We thought it was definitely the mom. And then it wasn't. It
wasn't the mom, but we see the curly hair, and it's the what's his name?
It's the twin. Let's put it that way. What do we
have? It's the twin, but I had this information pulled up, and
Alex.
Yes, thank you.
So yeah, he lost his sister, and as noted before, he was there, but he wasn't. It should have been more obvious, I guess, that it was him, but they do throw you off because he kind of is embodying his sister. He's become both of them in a way, I guess, is how they're playing it. And it's interesting because then Jamie Lee is like sympathetic, even though he's gone and murdered all these people. Yeah. She's like, down there, don't shoot him, don't kill him.
Really, really interesting scene. Like, I thought it was so interesting that now the moment before your brother was fighting you off, going after your boyfriend or your significant other in this scene. And then I understand that there's compassion because it's your sibling, but the way it ends with them just sort of like embracing, and she's like holding his head, like, because she like clock him really good in the head. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
And we're to believe that I was left to believe almost that the kid's dead in her arms.
Yeah. I think he does die in her arms there at the end. But I don't know. There's a Prom Night 2, so maybe
there's a Prom Night 2 called like Hello Mary Lou Prom Night 2, and it's supposed to be something to watch. Like,
really?
Okay. Yeah, it's supposed to be entertaining.
Interesting. Well, I will say this was the best part of the whole movie. I gave it an A- in terms of twisties, deeper meaning being sort of like the gender stuff that's going on that's hard to deal with. Certainly Sleepaway Camp did something similar. But I like the twin angle. You don't see the twin angle done this way, I guess. So I was on board for that.
Yeah, and I gave it a B for that reason, because I did not know who the killer was until that moment. Because, like I said, you're even in the fight scene, you're trying to figure out, like, is this a man? Is this a woman? Is it the mom? That's where my brain kept going, because we haven't seen the mom in a while. And I thought they pulled off a pretty good. The red herrings were great, and didn't see that coming.
No, there was one moment where it was like, maybe it's him, but he seems so nice with his sister. There's one scene where they're together in her room when she's getting ready for the prom, and she hits him with a crap ton of her perfume, and he is like, I don't want to smell like this, but he kind of does, sort of thing. And that was the only moment that, looking back on, I think was our clue. But this is it's a barely passing movie. I got a 2.33 GPA. I'm not sure it's getting anything but a low-rung state school. You know,
going to community college.
Yes, exactly. That's more likely.
Mine was a 2.2 because the twist was good, but it wasn't great. It wasn't like,
it could have been better. You know what I mean? They could have made more of it by giving that character more scenes that, added additional meaning. So it was a little lazy, I guess. And just that ridiculous disco scene alone puts it in its own category.
Oh man,
Let's
was that disco
hop
scene?
ahead 9 years, shall we?
Let's do it.
one of his earliest films, Cutting Class, with Mr. Brad Pitt, and our final girl, Jill Sholin, I guess you call her. Did you do the Icon Showdown cast with me involving Popcorn, which is the only other movie I've seen her in? She is
No.
considered a scream queen, and this reminded me a lot of Popcorn. Like her vibe emanates through the movie, making it its own, like, but it's a black comedy horror is how it's kind of pitched, and I found parts of it pretty funny. I can see through your grading you did not like this, so you tackle it first with your
Well, first of all, no, I haven't seen Popcorn. I know her from the movie The Stepfather, but specifically, her performance in this movie was not all that great.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Now, this movie is just also just loaded with cliches. It's fun, but
Yeah.
it's got a lot of weird things going on. Isn't Roddy McDowall plays the principal, but he's a huge pervert. Like he is a huge pervert.
Yeah.
Now, the other actor, I actually really like, and I know he's like in a number of 80s movies. Donovan, I think it's Lech, how you pronounce it. Donovan Lech, I knew from an 80s movie called The In Crowd as a kid. Like, now I think the location was kind of nothing great. You know, you got the classic.
It was Torrance, or not Torrance High. It's Excelsior High School, which, speaking of Quentin Tarantino, is the one that you see in his newest one, the Hollywood one, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This high school has been used often. At first, I was like, is this the same one they used for Buffy? But that's at Torrance High, which is also another California high school. They have these very similar vibes, these California high schools. But I got to say, I liked the high school. I did.
Okay.
And I liked that we have some interesting shots in the swamps with the dad played by Martin Mull, who also happens to be the DA. And this is one of the most ridiculous parts of it, because the killer shoots him with an arrow when he's on a hunting trip, which kind of sets up this whole, his daughter's then home alone during all this mayhem, and then Brad Pitt is, his character's Dwight, always trying to get up in there in the home when the dad's away, kind of leading you to believe maybe he's the reason the dad died.
Yeah. But they also, at the very start, when you excuse the father on this hunting trip, you're also like left to believe, like, oh, he could be a potential killer too.
Yeah. Until he starts talking to the dog, saying, "Do you not speak English? Go get me help." Then you know he doesn't have the wherewithal. I don't know how he became the DA, but Martin Mull in such a different part for him to play.
Funny. He's so great. He's so great.
I did appreciate that. And then you have this hilarious character, the janitor. But we're getting into the characters. Let's do a quick recap of what the plot is. Ultimately, you have these two friends, Brad Pitt and Donovan Leitch's character. And I think it's interesting. I do recognize him too, but he's kind of like a bargain bin rat packer from the 80s sort of thing. He doesn't feel... I mean, you recognize them, but you don't. These two were buddies of old, but Donovan, Brian is the character's name, had learned how to cut brakes via Brad Pitt's character, and that led to his father's death. He was sent away then.
He was sent away.
Insane asylum, where he's getting, they kept mentioning 75 volts, 75 watts in the brain constantly. So then he's suddenly back in the picture, and people start dying. But it's really hard for people to put two and two together. How this kid from the asylum is back and people are dying. But no, it's Brad Pitt's character, who's, the basketball player. And it's interesting because he's supposed to play kind of like this jerk jock. But I think it's just because we've seen so much Brad Pitt. I liked his character a lot. You know what I mean? It was
absolutely
brilliant. He was kind of a dick to this Brian, his friend of old. But Brian was a murderer. He deserved to be treated that way.
But Dwight's reasoning for being a dick to him is only because he was like looking at his girlfriend, like it was like that classic 80s thing, like with the gym class where he knocks him off of the rope, which is just terrible. He's like shaking the rope until Brian falls off of it. You're right, though. We have seen so much of Brad Pitt that this was almost more like, like found footage, and we like him.
Right, yeah, and it's kind of strange because you bring up the girlfriend, this Paula character played by Jill Schoelen, and she's supposed to be the lead, and I guess it's supposed to kind of revolve around her. But as it goes on, you realize it's really about these two friends. I feel like, and when we get to the deep meanings, that's what I saw going on more than anything. Like friends of old from elementary school, you know, their formative years, and now they're just so different. I found that interesting in just the whole how you grow apart from friends, and one of them doesn't understand why and is resentful. And I mean, I was probably digging too deep into what was going on there and applying it to how I lost friends in high school that were so
Sure.
close to me when I was younger. But I liked that more than I did the following Paula and her kind of dealing with both these guys, because I found that really secondary to Donovan and Brad Pitt's relationship in it, which I didn't hate. I thought it was complex and
No, no.
the best part of the movie.
I thought it was interesting though how the weird things they did to Brad Pitt's character to make you try to dislike him. What were also like this you could interpret him as this kid's father is pressuring him to be the
Yes.
star, and he's drinking alcohol. He blew his chances when the scout shows up at the game because he gets into a fight because he was drunk and the pressure was too much. I don't know. I mean, I think they did do a good job of making like you kind of not know how to
Right. Yeah.
grounded.
That's why I get
grounded.
a B plus in characters because of that. You have dynamic characters, I feel like. And granted, like you said, Jill's performance is maybe not the best as our final girl, but I felt like her character was well rounded enough for me. To still give the characters a B plus as a whole. And just not only did we love Slick in this last one as the standout, but I don't know if you remember the janitor in this one.
Oh
but
yeah,
he's my standout for this movie.
He may be the funniest character in this movie, or just like the most likable character because he's so weird. Here's something interesting though. Did you know that the actress Jill and Brad Pitt met on this film and were eventually engaged?
Whoa, I did not know.
And then did obviously never got married, but a much different life for Brad Pitt. Now,
yes.
But the reason I only gave it a B for characters is because these were also very, you know, cliche types. I don't know.
On the page, I think they were, but I felt like the actors heightened it. That's my B plus, you know, because it wasn't the same sort of archetypal stuff going on in Prom Night. I felt like there was at least, and granted, it's later in the 80s. I think I related more with what school felt like then, and that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
But I hear you. I do hear you that on the page, I think they were probably pretty archetypal.
But also, again, impressive casting, you know, getting Roddy McDowell was probably a pretty big pull. Granted, his character is a huge pervert.
Super
looking
pervert.
up
so many
skirts
of Jill just bending over. Even the art teacher does the same thing to her. Yeah, you see a lot of her panty line in this thing.
Yeah.
But just to backtrack here, I gave it a C- in terms of plot, as it is fairly standard. People just dropping dead, and in this case, it's so obvious who the killer is. I don't think they're able to kind of fool you. In this one at all. So that's why it's lower on the rung for me.
That's my biggest problem was that you literally have is he not escaped, but mental or how they put it. Gosh, I can't even find it now, but yeah, I think they even say like mental asylum. It's like, you know,
right. Yeah. Some sort of institution where he was getting zapped.
Yeah. Which is, you know, a very, even now, but even then, very cliche.
Right.
Michael Myers escaped from an asylum.
That's true. Yes. It was cliche in that sense. Production value, like you said, it wasn't anything special, but I did like the high school. I gave it a C plus. I know you weren't a huge fan, though. I mean, we're in the swamps. That long shot with Martin Mull in the swamp shooting the ducks in the sky.
Yeah.
It just looked like it was a beautiful picture to me. I don't know. I enjoyed it. And there's no real deeper meanings or the twisty that they try to pull with the ring and it being Brad Pitt's ring, but he wasn't the one wearing it during the kill.
Right.
Where he essentially just smushes her face into a Xerox machine. This one vice principal. Really lame. The kills as a whole were pretty lame. I gave that a C- as well.
Yeah, I think I gave it a C-. I think that could have saved it more. And here's the funny thing. I will tell people, if you're a fan of slasher films, especially from the 80s, you should check this out.
It's very watchable. I would say to a contemporary audience, this is more watchable than Prom Night, even though Prom Night is ending up getting a better score from us.
Yeah.
Because it is very campy and there are some funny moments and it does give you a vibe of high school in 1989. But interestingly, if we are allowing Prom Night to go on to community college, I'm thinking trade school for cutting class, especially given the last scene, which does take place in the shop room. Where they're battling with Sanders, and ultimately our killer does get sawed.
Gets sawed. I like that.
And it's a really lame kind of death too. There's another. We're gonna talk. Last week we were talking about. There's a saw death as well, but it's way more gratifying. We'll get to that one. But yeah, 2.2 for me. A GPA cutting class.
2.07 for me. I think, I mean, at the very beginning of the movie, when Martin Mull says, "No cutting class," like when you say the name of the movie within like the first 5 minutes of the movie.
And then it freeze frames on her looking at her dad like, "Oh, Dad," one of those moments. Just super cheese.
The thing that I was the most surprised about is that the creator or the writer of this movie went on to create one of my all-time favorite 90s shows called Salute Your Shorts.
No way.
Yes.
It's a great show. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess I see similar humors in there. Yeah. It does make sense now.
Steve Slavkin, he also was a writer on the Power Rangers. Yeah, this guy created a lot of stuff from my youth. So, I should probably go back in and regrade it just because of that. But
yeah, that bumps it up. If you look at it through that lens, or the Salute Your Shorts lens with a slasher, then it kind of works. All right, let's bounce ahead to 1993's. Unless do you have anything else to say about Cutting Class?
No.
All right, let's move on. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the movie. You see this one in the theater by any chance?
I did not.
I did. I saw it at the Tivoli in Downers Grove. And,
is that right?
$1.75 ticket for this one. I remember at that point it was $1.75 because that was the same year that Jurassic Park came out, and I remember seeing that so many times that year. But when
it's
Buffy
a great movie theater too.
It is. It's a fun thing. Crap seats, at least when I was there. I hope they re-up their seats. But I remember liking it at the age of 11 a lot. I think on a rewatch, what I found charming about it diminished considerably.
Same here. Man, I really remembered liking it more than when I rewatched it. And
same, yeah.
I'm so impressed with this cast too.
I know. Out of nowhere. What was the one that caught you the most off guard? Because I wasn't even sure. I couldn't even recognize this actor.
Well, Stephen Root, I don't remember Stephen Root. But I didn't know that Thomas Jane.
Yes, that's the one for me. It did not even look like Tom Jane. I'm like, is that Tom Jane?
I know.
He's the boss of the fix-it shop, the car fixer shop. What do you call this? Mechanical shop.
Zeph,
car fixer shop.
Yeah. But I mean, Paul Rubens, Rutger Hauer, Donald Sutherland, Hilary Swank, David Arquette. I mean, it's
Ben
crazy.
Affleck out of nowhere too on the rival basketball team.
That's
Who
right.
just gives the secondary villain vampire, the buddy of Luke Perry, who gets turned fairly early.
Drooler.
Just the ball hands it over. Go ahead, do what you want with it, man. So weird to see Ben Affleck that young, just in like a one-line part. It just just the cast alone is worth going back to look at this for, because it's like, you see Hilary Swank in a role. You don't see Hilary Swank as like one of the cool mean girls, and then she goes on to do Boys Don't Cry or whatever. It's just totally different vibe from her. Well, what did you feel about our? I mean, everyone knows the plot of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, right? This is the chosen one who's destined to fight vampires. She's the Slayer of Vampires. And as somebody who absolutely adores the show, I think I had put it on a pedestal, and it doesn't belong to be there in the same way. The show is excellent, and the movie, I'm surprised that, given how crappy it kind of is, he was able to sell a series off of it. Joe Whedon, creator,
and take it in a direction that was way more enjoyable.
Definitely.
You know, creating, I mean, I'm not going to say new characters, but certainly characters that weren't in this movie, because Donald Sutherland's role,
Merrick the Watcher.
And I loved
Anthony Head. If you compare them like character per character and what's going on from the show to the movie, the show just knocks it out of the park. And Donald Sutherland can be really good. I'm not sure how much he was taking this seriously. I don't know if he thought he should take it seriously. But their chemistry was shit. Christy Swanson and him, really odd chemistry together. Didn't like it at all. I was grateful when he died, which I didn't remember. I forgot that the Watcher in this one does die. But I mean, with the exception of such a strange cast, there's not a lot redeemable. And even I remember Paul Rubens having such a bigger part than he actually did, and like saving the movie, and he didn't. Now when I go back and look at it, I'm like, okay, he's fun, but he's not saving it like I thought I had remembered him saving it. But in terms of plot, I have to give it a B+ because it did go on to spawn one of my favorite serial TV shows ever, and the plot that accumulated after the movie. But I could see how most people might not enjoy this plot too much.
I think, you know, again, I think a lot of it had to do with remembering it being so much fun, especially from as a younger viewer. But there was other movies around that time that I might also just be holding it up to, like Fright Night or Once Bitten with Jim Carrey, which were fun vampire movies. And I think I was putting this in that same category, and I wouldn't anymore, because I think those hold up a little bit better. And there was nothing really all that special about this plot line. You know, it's also the I don't remember.
The only thing that is amazing about it, that is why I think Buffy got picked up, is just because you have a final girl that's kicking butt. You know what I mean? You have the tables have turned. This is a new archetype for us to then see, you know, come up a lot in horror since then. But that's the only deeper thing going on. Otherwise, it's very surface.
And I guess I just didn't remember some of those flashback moments.
Oh God.
And those completely like just take you out of it. Like,
they're jarring.
And this movie is camp. I mean, there's no denying it. But you could ground those a little bit better. I mean, like, she doesn't need to look the same, like be the same actor.
I know.
And these,
that's ridiculous. I mean, that's another thing, is like the consistency of how the Slayers work in the show is very different from the movie. And even the show, at least when you stake a vamp, they poof away. CGI is a little cheesy, but at least that made sense in that you don't have to then deal with a body, getting rid of a body like they clearly do in this movie version. I would not. If you're a fan of Buffy, you don't need to see this. For some reason, I had thought she'd burnt down the school gym at the end to like take care of the vamps. That didn't happen. I just created some memory, and I think it's because in the show they say Buffy, when she moves to Sunnydale, had to move there because she'd burned down her old high school gym. So I think I conflated that plot point in the series with what actually happened, which is interesting because we're about to talk about another movie where the gym does get burnt down, which was kind of like really ironic because I kept waiting for the school to get burnt down in Buffy and it didn't happen. I'm like, this is one of those Mandela effect moments where I remembered something that wasn't.
Right.
But yeah, let's wrap this one up unless you got anything else to say about it.
No, I think everything was a bit average. I'm giving it was like almost a C average for me here.
Yeah, I mean, a little bias. I gave it probably better than I should have as a whole, but the kills alone are such shit. I gave that a D. Yep. As a whole, it's a 2.4. So far, Prom Night 2.33, Cutting Class 2.2 for me, and 2.4. We're kind of in the same ballpark for all these.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, 2.2 for me on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and that's mostly because I was more disappointed in myself and my holding this to a different holding a candle to it. I just think it's nostalgia like playing a trick on me.
And it doesn't help Christy Swanson now is in the news for not being a really good person. Let's just put it there.
I was going to bring that up, and then I was like, I think the world knows that.
Yeah, exactly. So let's jump ahead then. We are making a serious jump here. 13 years, 2006 to All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. Interestingly, with the exception of Buffy, I hadn't seen any of these 5 that we're talking about, including All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, until this week.
I was going to say some of these were second watches for me. Now, All the Boys Love Mandy Lane is a very interesting movie because it was supposed to be released in like 2008 or 2006, maybe. 2006. It was supposed to be released, and it was not. It was released in the Toronto film festivals, like their horror, like I forget what it's called. They have like and that's kind of where when you're first selling a movie, you kind of put it in that slot for horror fans to watch it. The Weinsteins bought the movie, had some bad screenings, like those ridiculous people who screen movies who have no business judging them because they wouldn't have watched it in the first place.
Right.
They didn't like this movie at all, and the Weinsteins shelved it. Now, it wasn't until like 2013 or something that it actually got like a Blu-ray release. Yeah, they I think they released
it. So it did not have a theatrical release.
No joke. No.
Interesting.
Oh, and there was a subdivision like entertainment category of the Weinsteins that actually were the ones who released it because somebody who actually worked for them liked the film instead of the Weinsteins just saying they liked it. They're idiots. But this movie was kind of took up some like folklore where like this movie, some people had seen it in Toronto and then it never got released. And then it went overseas. People liked it. And then they finally released it. And I think it also kind of hurts that movie. It puts a level to it, that people were so hyped to see this movie finally. And I will say this, I enjoyed it.
I did too, despite Amber Heard, because I don't like her.
Right.
For a lot of reasons, but I just don't like her acting style either, if I'm honest with you. What I really liked about this movie more than anything is the production value. Yeah. I felt like it felt like an art house horror in a way. Sometimes it went too far where it does those sort of like I think it's reminiscent of Texas Chainsaw where they'll kind of pause the frame for a second as something horrible is happening.
Yeah.
I feel like they did that too much, but at the same time I love the big sky once they're out at the ranch. Yep. And a majority of it is then taking place outside. I really like just looking at it. I got to give it that. And I don't know. Nobody else was really that memorable. What do you think about? I mean, there was a couple decent. Her buddy, who was the nerd, was kind of an interesting killer.
Yeah, Emmett or Garrett or something like that.
Yes, Emmett.
Yeah, yeah. So the filmmakers definitely use Texas Chainsaw. They even acknowledge it as a like a, I don't know. They did those wide shots on purpose to sort of give you that same vibe of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Right. And I do like the detail and their production value where they. Did you notice that the when they're drinking, they're using yellow Solo cups instead of red Solo cups?
No, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, and that was to give it that different time feeling, so it didn't seem like a 2000s, Yeah, they did things like that I really appreciated. And the other film, it really kind of feels like is like Dazed and Confused, like that party scene, it definitely like had those marrying of those two films, which was a really fun kind of combination.
Yeah, I agree. We didn't talk about the plot too much, but ultimately you have Mandy Lane who comes back after Summer, and she's blossomed, I guess, as they put it in Wikipedia. Yeah. So all the boys are suddenly in love with her, but she's reluctant to be any party to that until like her friend convinces her to come out to this ranch. I guess, is it a ranch where they headed?
Yeah, it's a ranch because they even have a ranch hand played by Anson Mount.
Right. Character Garth is the ranch hand who's there. Keeps the snakes away from him. But ultimately, you're right. It's these teenagers go out to kind of just party and have a good old raucous time, and they get clipped off. But she only agreed to go to the ranch if she could bring her nerd friend Emmett with, who prior to this was bullied, and then he ended up talking this like jerk character into jumping off a roof into a pool. And this is actually one of the most interesting scenes, I feel like, because you see this a lot, like in Dazed Confused, when they're jumping into the pool, or Almost Famous, right? I'm a Golden God jumps into the pool, but this guy cracks his head, which really sets the tone for the movie, I think, real quick. And it's a really dark film, I would say, as a whole.
Yeah,
but then Emmett comes with them, and he turns out to be the one slicing and dicing. And really, his motive is, I'm guessing, just revenge, right? Did you take anything more than just he'd been bullied and now he's getting revenge? And granted, he's
no, I took it a little bit differently. I think, and especially that pool scene there, I think it showed us who Mandy really was, and the fact that she was terrified and sickened as to what boys would do to impress her or get with her. That one guy even says, "I want to get with you." And I looked at this as her true friend, Emmett. They were putting this plot together for, I don't even think it's revenge. I think it's just like to prove a point, to almost like,
all right, it's directed sociopathy with with a motive, a clear motivation beyond revenge. Okay, I see that. And yes, it is important to now note twisties and the deeper meanings. You don't know that Mandy's been working with him the whole time until the end. Could you clear up one thing for me, though? I didn't understand their plan to then kill themselves after they'd killed everybody. And granted, she then decides not to follow through with that. But what was the logic behind them then killing themselves?
I think it was because they wouldn't be able to live with themselves after that. They had at the beginning, they even had that journal, which was like their suicide pact, like their murder, double murder.
It's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet. In a way, like a horror Romeo and Juliet. But she doesn't follow through at the end, and her payoff when we find out that she really is part of it, when she stabs her friend who's running to get a hug from her, and she just hugs into the knife. I like that. That's why I gave some of the kills in this high points, between that one and then the gun in the mouth being pushed through after a sexy scene where it was then mimicking what had happened. I gave it an A- in the kills.
Yeah, I gave it a B just because there was some stuff they're doing that classic, like, we're not going to show you everything type of a thing, but I think and this is kind of like a question too, but like, do you think that Mandy ultimately, not because she doesn't want to kill herself necessarily, but is also a little sickened by her friend who is kind of just like what all the other guys, like he just also just wants to be with Mandy? Like,
Right.
do you think that she's,
Yeah, that might have changed her mind at that moment because, yeah, at the very end he was trying to kiss her and get. Yeah, that's very possible. I don't know. It's hard for me to want to give any credit to this character. I mean, mostly it's just based in my Amber Heard disdain.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, if it had been played by somebody else, I think that could have come through more for me. Because as a whole, I think it is worth watching. It's definitely a must see for horror fans. As a whole, it got a 3.2 GPA from me, so that means it was doing some stuff right.
yeah, I agree. I think it was good filmmaking. I was shot on film. You could tell like that it actually looked. The production value was great. The acting was good. A lot of those actors have, aside from Amber, have gone on to do other things. I think one of them was in like Twilight, and one of them was in True Blood. I think that they've got familiar looks to their faces because they've gone on to actually have some pretty successful careers. So the performances and the characters I thought were pretty decent.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a strong movie as a whole. I do find that fascinating, its whole backstory, though. But we are at an hour, so I want to make sure we talk about Tragedy Girls because this is my favorite of the bunch by far.
Yeah. I knew you were going to like this movie. I just, when I said Tragedy Girls, like if you hadn't seen it, it's good. It's a new spin on horror. It feels like it like it comes from that Scream generation.
Yes.
That Kevin Williamson vibe. It has really good performances, but also feels like an indie film.
And it has some of like my favorites, like Craig Robinson. I don't know, he's one of our victims here, and he kind of like steals the clout from them. But just the basic premise is you got these two girls that essentially are trying to get clout. They're trying to become famous through murdering, and they actually, I mean, the opening scene where they then kind of kidnap a serial killer themselves, who's a really funny character. Who is it? Kevin Durant plays Lowell.
He's so good. He's so good.
Who they essentially want to learn from. He's reluctant. Eventually, he kind of turns them against each other for a little bit, enough to get himself released by Sadie's character. Is it Sadie? Let me see. I don't want to make sure I'm getting these names right.
Sadie is the one from like the
Sadie's
Deadpool movies.
Brianna. The short-haired girl from Deadpool, and then Alexandra Shipp Michaela then starts working with Lowell at the end. But along the way, they're killing like their exes and even willing to kill the boys they're interested in now, like Jack Quaid and Sadie's character have this strange romance cooking because he's helping them with all their videos. I think you hit it on the head with it. It has that sort of like self-aware meta Scream vibe to it that really helps it. Josh Hutcherson when he gets killed.
Oh my god!
Another great like,
cameo.
Yes, if I was gonna get killed, I'm glad it was you that did it. That being said, I do wonder if we might like this more. I don't know. I was watching it with Mara, and she was not a huge fan of this. She was, first of all, really not a huge fan of the actress who played Sadie, the girl from Deadpool. She was annoyed by her.
Okay.
She just couldn't seem to get in it, and maybe it's that meta-ness that was putting her. I don't know. I'm wondering in terms of audiences where this does skew.
Sure, and I think a big part of that is like, why should we like these two characters?
Right. Yeah.
You know, they're terrible kids, and they are this part of this generation who just wants to be famous, and they want to do it the easy way through social media. Right. This also, side note, this would pair really well with the movie Spree.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But you do like Jack Quaid though, so the romantic interest in it, you do like, and that's what's so interesting is I feel like it does again turn the table, similar to what Buffy was doing, just with the gender expectations. which has good payoff at the end, because you really do feel like these girls now have given up on each other's friendship at the end,
Yeah.
and that's not what ends up happening. They get back together, and then they end up becoming the savior. Even though they're the murderers, they
So
frame it
good.
as if they're saviors, and now they have this crazy following. And I thought it had a good payoff, and it had such a great look throughout the whole movie too. And you're right, they're horrible, and they're kind of like, I gotta say, they are kind of likable for
I
how
know.
horrible they are.
I know.
But I think everyone they kill, you like so much, between Craig Robinson, Josh Hutcherson, and even them trying to kill Jack Quaid, or they actually do eventually. That's what kept my character, investment, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Is that I wanted to see if they pulled it off, and they do, and it's a ride. And some of the best kills in any of these 5 that we watched by far, which brings up the shop room murder of this kind of like the mean girl again. It's very, very, very grisly in a way that it's not in Cutting Class. And then what's funny is they keep killing these people, and people keep brushing off all these kills as accidents, which is something that I really loved. And then in this one, they're like, we got to make sure this doesn't look like an accident, even though ironically in this case it was an accident, because she gets brought up by the chain. Granted, they were trying to kill her while this accident occurred, but then they go and just chop up her body and put her head on like this little spinning device in the shop room to make it very clear
this was not an accident,
a malicious act.
Yeah,
which I loved. I did like it a lot. I can't believe it fell under my radar. Do you remember this hitting the theaters or anything?
It may have done a very small release, but I kind of remember when this was dropping like on streaming. It got a pretty good push, and I think it was like straight to Hulu, and I think it was Hulu first. I think Shudder now streams it, but I'm surprised it didn't get more attention as well, just because of the amount of great cameos that they have.
Right.
Certainly. And
it's
the fact that
it's culty too, it's like I could see this becoming a cult classic in the way Heathers has, or even, I don't know, you remember the movie Jawbreaker? Kind of reminded me a little of Jawbreaker. That same sort of vibe. So I do think it's going to have staying power, hopefully.
Yeah, it's great. I would recommend it to any slasher fan. I gave it straight A's across the board because I thought it was,
my goodness.
I just saw like everything was so well done. I mean, the locations were fun. The kills were super fun.
Oh, amazing. The mayor's kill, where I don't know how he pulled this off, because this wasn't even their kill. It was Lowell, who puts the mayor through a flagpole, but it's a full height flagpole. So I'm not exactly sure how he pulled that off. Or the image is startling. I gave it all A's with the exception of the twisties and deeper. I felt like it was there, but it was a little obvious. It's something I've seen before. There's like old even plays about killing to get fame sort of stuff. Yeah. But it did have such a beautiful twist on it. I gave it the 3.8, so it's almost got that 4.0 for me. But you gave it an A+ in characters, and I think that's fair.
Well, just again, when you have these 2 main characters that are anti-heroes, and like I said, I was posting that as a question to everybody. I did like them, which was so terrible. Yeah. I mean, they're not good people, but that is good writing. That is good character development when you have backstory and really know who these girls are. I mean, Michaela, even when she's with her family, and
yes, her parents are hilarious.
God, her parents are so funny, and I think that there's a part of that which kind of like makes sense. It kind of clicks why she's so different. Yeah, and twisted. Yeah.
And that's another thing is socioeconomically, it did stuff that you don't normally see, and where you got Brianna's character living in a trailer.
Yeah, her dad.
Dad.
Oh my God, her dad is just like kind of like nonchalant about like, oh, there's a killer on the loose. Like, he didn't really care as much as Michaela's parents, and Michaela comes from a really good home. Yeah.
it knocked it out of the park for me, but I would be curious as to why it didn't take for
Yeah.
some.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a good story there.
Yeah.
Because what year did it come out?
This is
2017.
2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're rocking 5 years ago. Which makes me think, has there been any super recent high school movies beyond that of late of note?
Yeah, there actually is one, and I'm not going to remember the name of it, but it was a Netflix original about a small town and
Oh, okay.
about people getting killed off. It's high school students. Yeah.
Fair enough. I think, for the most part, things are leaning toward streaming series now. This is the golden age of the long runner.
Yep.
But I think we've covered our bases here. Welcome back to school, ladies and gentlemen. Young men and young women.
Yeah. Walking those
the
halls
classroom.
this semester. Be careful.
And frankly, high school is as scary as it can get in this world. So
that's right.
Do your best, young students, to stay alive.